Yeah. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
This Parsha is not going to be read in most schools in the world. I don't know if Corona has hit South America, but pretty much Israel, North America. So it's a very special opportunity because we start off with the double Parsha of Vayakel-Pidukei, and of course, can you get something more apropos than the laws of Shabbos? Laws of Shabbos is everyone coming together. Moshe gathers all the people, and probably the last 100 years been very hard to get the attention of the Jewish people. Everyone's doing different things, and now everyone's focused on the same thing. And my prayer is everyone moves from the focus of Corona to the focus of Hashem. I just want to add, it could be a good idea that when you're listening to the class, you want to say something, you say something, but if not, you can put yourself on mute. That way we don't hear, background noise. So I want to start off with a question. The question is as follows. The question is, in the last month, as you were involved in this crisis, or in your life, have you ever said, you heard a rabbi give an appeal, or and you said, you know what, I'm going to give tzedakah to that person. And then when it comes time to it, you say, you know what, I'd rather not give the tzedakah to the person. I was going to give $100, and then I said, you know what, I'm only going to give $50. How many of us in our lives have in our heads said we're going to do something, and then when it comes down to it, we don't do it. But then we feel guilty because we say, hey, didn't I just pledge in my heart to give money to charity? And I pledged in my heart $100 and I only gave $50. I was just heard a wonderful story. Rabbi Gold has a story about a man in World War II that a bomb hit near him, and he said, I'm going to give my life over to Hashem if I get my arms and my legs back. And it didn't. What does that mean when he made this pledge? So when you make a pledge, do you have to, in your heart, do you have to commit to the pledge? It's a good question. How many of us have ever committed to something in our hearts and then not actually done it? I'm going to raise my hand right here. Anyone else want to raise their hand? And anyone ever committed, say they're going to do something and then they actually don't do it?
Yes, yeah, we're going to do it.
Are those the Greenberg kids?
That's me.
So as you get older, nothing changes the Greenberg children because you wind up saying you're going to do something and then you don't do it. How many times did you tell your parents you're going to go to bed after this, and then after this you didn't go to bed? So we made many, many commitments and we don't keep them. So what is the law about making a commitment? So Gemara actually brings down that it says, because it says here in the Jewish people, they gave in the Torah, in Vayakel-Pidukei, it says they gave nediv libo. Which is, anyone want to translate that in English? Nediv libo.
The kindness of their heart.
Kindness of their heart. So if they give nediv libo, so the Torah says that when you do that, when you give something to a holy place, if it's nediv libo, so then it's like a commitment. If you signed a document that said you're going to give $100 to your friend, you can't go back on that. You already signed that you can give $100 to your friend. When you give something to a charity, which is nediv libo, total love and commitment of the heart, that's as if you signed it. So that's something very powerful, because if you committed something in your heart to a charity and it was nediv libo, then that's a real commitment. That's as if you wrote a document and said, I'm committed to that, which is pretty scary. But that's the laws of nediv libo. Now, if you said, hey, I like my neighbor, I'm going to give him my extra basketball because he has a basketball court, and then I decide, you know what, I'm going to keep the basketball for myself. If you just thought that in your head, you can do backsies on that, because it's not a necessary commitment when you just say, I'm going to do something for someone else. Why am I saying all this? Because of an amazing story. There's a story of Rav Safra. And Rav Safra, in the end of the Gemara in Makos, so he was davening Shmon Esrei. Let me take you through it. He was going like this. Oh, he's davening, shuffling, right? The Orthodox exercise. And someone comes to him and did not realize he was davening. and he says, "Hey, Rav Safra, I think he wanted to buy something off him." He said, "Rav Safra, I'll give you $100 for your treadmill." I don't know if Rav Safra had a treadmill. He probably didn't. But he said, "I'll give you $100 for the treadmill." And Rav Safra was still davening. So the man thought that he was negotiating hard. He didn't realize Rav Safra was davening, and he thought Rav Safra was just negotiating with him. He says, "Okay, Rav Safra, I'll give you $200. And Rav Safra was still davening, and the man's like, "Okay, $300. By the time Rav Safra finished davening, the man said, "Okay, we got a deal, $300. And Rav Safra said, "No, it's the deal was for $100, and I'm going to give you $100. The only reason why I committed to, you thought I was at 300 was because I was quiet. But the truth is, when you said 100, I heard you, and I was like, okay, that's a good deal for the 100. So we ask a question on Rav Safra. So why did Rav Safra agree to the deal for $100 when he could have gotten $300 for it? So the truth is that many of you will say, well, Rav Safra was a man of truth. And we're big believers in truth. I say truth like more than 50% of the time. I'm into that. So if you're a man of truth, so you heard 100, you were happy with 100, and that's the deal. So that's how most people read the Gemara. The Gemara says that Rav Safra committed to the 100. He's a man of truth. He was okay with the 100. He couldn't talk because he was davening, and that's why he left it at 300. So he's an honest guy. So it says the Parsha. Now, the Parsha was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Elie, and my father-in-law, my Rivki, her maiden name is Elie, and on the Shidduch resume, when I was dating Rivki, I was told that she was from the Parsha, from this great rabbi, but I don't really believe that. She was pretty, so I dated her. But I'll tell you what the Parsha says. The Parsha says that don't think Rav Safra's great quality was truth. He says Rav Safra's great quality was nediv libo, that in his heart he said, I'm ready to do the deal. And that's why he committed to the 100. But 1 second here. Mr. Marsha, Rabbi Marsha, that's actually wrong. You only commit to things in your heart. The only time that you actually are officially committed to something, when you only commit it in your heart, that's when you're dealing with stuff like for the temple. If I said in my heart, I'm going to help out the shul, I'm going to give it new carpet, and then I changed my mind. But if I was nediv libo, if I in the shul said the shul needs new carpeting, by the way, the shul does not need new carpeting. They're not going to vacuum it for a while. No one's getting it dirty. But if I committed in my heart to do something for the shul, to do something for the temple, that's a legit deal. That's signed, sealed, and delivered. For Safra, you're just buying a treadmill. Even if you had nediv libo for a treadmill, big deal. You didn't commit to it. Everyone understand the question? Here again, let's repeat. If you commit to something for a charity, that's signed, sealed, and delivered. If you commit to non-charity stuff, just because you committed it in your heart, you don't have to be stuck on the deal. So if the Marsha says the reason why Rav Safra was stuck on the deal is because he had a complete heart to sell that treadmill. So the Marsha says, no, you're missing the whole point. If you commit to something in your heart for something physical, then that's never a legit commitment. If you commit in your heart for something physical, that's not a commitment. If you commit in your heart for something spiritual, that's a commitment. Says the Marsha, Rav Safra didn't live in 2 compartments of his life. He didn't have his shul life, and he didn't have his secular life. Rav Safra had one life, and that was to be a great Jew. So to Rav Safra, there was no difference. His shul life, his davening life, his learning life, his eating life, his exercise life, his walking the dog life, his painting his house life, his collecting his mail life, everything Rav Safra did was a spiritual venture. Hence, when Rav Safra was making a business deal with the guy, it wasn't, hey, this is not my shul life, this is my business life. To everything, Rav Safra's whole life was a shul life. And that's why the commitment that he made at that point was a signed, sealed, and delivered commitment. That's lesson number one for the Corona week. Week one of Corona is that we don't have shul, we don't have communal davening, and I know, let's be honest, most of us don't go to shul regularly as we should anyways. Now no one's going to shul, and our job is the same. Our shul life has to extend all over the map. Okay, idea number one. Idea number two, I hate doing this because I always get complaints, but now I can just shut everyone off and I don't hear complaints. I'm going to tell you the difference between men and women. The difference between men and women is that men always talk about the difference between men and women. So that's one difference. But I'll tell you the difference between them, because with all the things that were going on in the temple, and there were lots of things built in the temple. You had the ark, right? You had the menorah,
Thank you,
the curtain.
I
There
need
was
that.
one thing that was specific. If I can just ask the Greenbergs to put it on mute. There was one thing that was very specific that the women would do. Does anyone know what the women did very specifically?
It's not us. We're on mute.
You're on mute? Well, how did I hear you said you're on mute, Greenberg?
We unmuted. I think it's Vivian.
Yeah, I think it's Vivian's fault.
What do you mean
Anyone
unmuted?
want to unmute and give me the answer? What was the one thing?
How do I don't want to unmute.
You,
I can hear everyone. Everyone's good, but now.
Can you hear me?
yes. Can you
They hear me. Okay.
Answer this question.
Say-
By the way,
Vivian, you have to put your speaker on mute.
some product placements here for Real Canadian Water.
I have to put it on mute. They said they hear me.
And the nice product placement.
Okay, it's not right with the audio.
Just while you're not speaking, put your speaker on mute, that's all. Because otherwise we hear a lot of noise from like extraneous noise.
Yeah, we're always speaking. So.
Okay. Now that everyone's on mute, no one's going to answer this question. So I actually have a studio audience here. I have my son to my right, a good 5 feet from me, and my son-in-law 6 feet from me because he knows that I can't reach. So what was the one thing that women contributed to the temple was different? Everyone contributed, but the one thing is this, that the women contributed extra to the temple, that was the weaving. The women had this skill that they were able to weave, get a load of this, I don't know if any, raise your hand if you're a woman, you can do this now, weave the goat hair from the live goat into something. So you're taking the goat hair from the live goat. Has anyone ever done that? Okay, besides for me, I tried that once. No, I never did that, to be honest. But to take the goat hair from the goat and to weave something. That's specifically a unique character trait that the women were able to do that. Now the question is, what's the lesson here? So the Reb Shimon Schwab, a great rabbi from Europe who ended up moving to Washington Heights, the head of the German Jewish community, the Goyers community. Any German Jews out there? Well, they would have come to the class on time. The great Reb Schwab has a sefer called Meine Beis HaShoeva, and he says the following. He says, if you had to boil down the difference between men and women, and I know you're going to tell me, but I know men that act like women and women that act like men. I get it. We're all a hybrid in many ways or whatever. But he says the big difference between men and women is that men, he calls this, has the koach of pirut, the strength to separate them. Men look at something and then say, okay, I'm going to compartmentalize, and they're always thinking about how to separate and make distinctions. And that's a great quality. In fact, the whole Talmud is based on making distinctions. But women have the koach of chibur, of the koach, the strength of bringing people together. So as a man, perhaps can tell you 10 reasons why he should not join this synagogue or that synagogue or hang out with that guy. A woman's quality is bringing everything together. In fact, probably if you had 10 men at a room, everyone would be in their own corners, and one woman brings everyone together around the Shabbos table. So the greatness of a man, right, is, according to Schwab, is that he's able to make distinctions, and the greatness of a woman is actually to bring things together. I don't know if anyone knows Ashes Chayil by heart, but there's an instrument in Ashes Chayil. I don't know how many instruments in Ashes Chayil there are. The Kamku Tamecha. Does anyone, my son-in-law, know the son or son-in-law? What's the word? Ashes Chayil means the Kamku Tamecha Pa La.
Pelach.
What's a pelach? Who said that? What's
A weaving thing.
A weaving thing. How do you know that? What are you, Israeli? Oh, you are. Okay. That's pretty incredible because that's a very nuanced word. What is this? Why do we say that this lady has the classic Jewish woman has this pelach, the kamku tamecha pelach, because the pelach is this instrument that's able to weave things together. And that's the greatness of a woman. A woman is able to take many people, bring them together, take cousins and aunts and brothers and make something. And I always wondered, you have these big family meals. Who's the one that's bringing everyone together, right? It's the woman that says, we have to do this. We have to have this big family meal. If it's just guys, basically we're already eating by ourselves our whole life. But it's the woman that's creating this koach of chibur. So idea number 2 is that the difference between them, and by the way, it's highlighted by an amazing story. I don't know, has anyone heard of a lady named Bruria? So Bruria was one of the great ladies of yesteryear. There's a school named after her in New Jersey. I think my niece went there. Yes, I'm pretty sure my niece Serena went there.
I got the rabbi.
My one married niece, and she went to Bruria. But Bruria is more than a school. Bruria was a lady. Very fascinating story of Bruria. She actually had a very famous husband. Anyone know the name of Bruria's husband? I'll give you a hint. His name starts with. Anyone? Okay. Next is with a Mem. Rabbi Mem. Anyone? How many guys' first names start with a Mem? Moshe, Menachem, Mordechai, Mendel, Menachem Mendel. We're going to go with Meir. So Bruria was married to a Reb Meir, and Reb Meir had a really bad neighbor. Let's call them the Schwartzes. No, we're not going to give names. And this Reb Meir was praying that this guy should be, adios. And Bruria said, don't pray that he should be, moved away. Pray that his deeds should be moved away, and let's bring him closer. And really, that's the koach. If you can boil it down to the koach of a man, says let's get rid of this guy, and the koach of a woman is Bruria, and she says let's not just get rid of his bad qualities, but let's bring him closer. So that really highlights the difference between a man and a woman. Okay. Idea number 3. Idea number 3 is, how many of you have thought that I've stolen money from the shul? Anyone by raise of hands? No? I'm the only one? Oh no. Let me put that hand down. Whoop, right very closely. Anyone ever think like, come on, this rabbi, he must be taking something for himself. He has all these kids, right? How did he build that house next door to the shul? I mean, who owns that house? And the shul's really nice. He probably skimmed a little bit. Am I the only one that thinks that?
Oh my gosh, Rabbi.
Okay.
Nobody thinks that.
Nobody thinks that? Come on, Alicia, be honest. Okay, so I'll tell you that that it's not uncommon to think, hey, what's going on here? Is the rabbi taking any money? I mean, if a rabbi comes and he's raising money for yeshiva in Israel, right? Let's call it yeshiva, Chachmei Tiberia, and he's raising money. Does he need to get paid himself? And let's say that rabbi is rented, instead of a Corolla, he's going around Toronto in a Lexus. How many of you would be like, come on, he rented a Lexus? Sometimes when I'm going to or back from Israel, I see rabbis in business class. Has anyone ever seen a rabbi in business class? No? Am I the only one that's seen a rabbi in business class? I'll tell you what,
Yep.
when I'm going to the back and I see a rabbi in business class, I'm thinking one thing. I'm thinking like, hello, you're really bad for fundraising because if you're in business class, who's going to give you any money? But then, let's say the rabbi's older, he has points and this and that. My son, Moshe, just came back from Israel last week on business class. So we got in the last seat, and actually I didn't even get it. My friend got it, and my friend got in business class, and I'm thinking, just tell everyone your last name is like Lipner or Hach or something. Don't tell them your last name is Carfunkel. It's really bad for fundraising if the rabbi's son's in business class. And now I just told the whole world that. Not really smart of me. But I'll tell you something crazier. If no one here thinks that I've ever stolen money from the shul, then the odds are that probably none of you have thought that Moshe Rabbeinu skimmed money. Lynn, did you want to say something? It says Linda Lulu's raised hand. Okay. Thank you, Linda, for raising your hand, but we're not in a classroom. We can just talk. So how many of you would think that Moshe Rabbeinu stole money from the Mishkan? I mean, that's crazy if you thought Moshe Rabbeinu stole money. I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu was, first of all, he was incredibly wealthy. And Moshe was Moshe. Who in their right mind would think that Moshe Rabbeinu, the great Moshe, the one that every kid is named after, stole money from the temple? Who would think that? And yet, we're told, the Medrash brings down, that Moshe in this week's Parsha did a very exact accounting of what's going on in the temple because people were accusing him behind his back. No one had the guts in front of him, but behind his back of taking some shmir. Moshe Rabbeinu taking some shmir, taking 10% off the top. I mean, that's crazy. And yet, we're told that the Jewish people were talking about Moshe behind his back that he was taking some money for himself. I mean, who would think that people would do that? So I want to tell you one of the beautiful things about the corona, because you have to look at silver linings. I mean, I just read somewhere that 6 priests in one part of northern Italy all died because obviously the people giving last rites are the priests, and the 6 priests in one small city died from corona. And the statistics are, we don't know how many people died in China and all these other places, but I mean, there's lots of death, and the economic impact is huge. But if we can see some silver linings in this whole coronavirus, you can see, number one, is that there's no celebrities anymore doing good things or bad things. There's no, all the politicians are sort of focused on solving the problem. There are no athletes doing anything more. The thing that has calmed down a lot is Lashon Hara, gossip. There's nothing to gossip anymore. The only thing you can do is gossip about this was a bad meme. So my Rifki was just telling me that, in 6 years from now, our grandchildren will be telling our grandchildren about the coronavirus in 2020, and the grandchildren are going to say, the new grandchildren will say, but Bubby and Zadie, what did you do during the coronavirus? And they say, well, we made memes. That's what we did. So, I mean, that's basically the only thing people are doing that's silly, but there's really nothing else going on. You can't say this celebrity did something stupid, this celebrity got drunk, this celebrity thinks they're all this and they're not all that, and this athlete should be nothing's going on. So there's very little to gossip about. I'm sure, there's still a challenge to say because you're in a house with a couple of people, but Baruch Hashem, the Lashon Hara, I think, has calmed down in the world, and the world has gotten a reboot. But when people were saying Lashon Hara, people were saying Lashon Hara on Moshe. I mean, you have to be pretty sick to say Lashon Hara on Moshe Rabbeinu, and yet the Medrash brings down that people were saying Lashon Hara on Moshe. So lesson number one is that if you talk a lot, it's very hard not to go into Lashon Hara. So if people just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and eventually you're talking about the temple and saying, wow, that temple is gorgeous. It's amazing. It has the ark. It has the menorah. And they say, oh, you know what else? That probably cost a lot of money. Yeah, we put billions of dollars into that. Hey, Moshe's got pretty wealthy off of that. So it's probably not the first minute in the discussion picking on Moshe, but probably 1 hour into the discussion when everyone should have just gone back to do their work, they stayed and schmoozed more, and schmoozing, extra schmoozing leads to potentially Lashon Hara. So lesson number one is we have to be very careful of just nonstop talking, because nonstop talking leads to Lashon Hara. Idea number two is that, has anyone ever done something for their shul or their community? I'm going to raise my hand here, right? Have you ever done anything? Anyone? I only see one hand being raised. Has anyone ever done anything for their community in their life?
Every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I just
you
want
know,
What he teaches,
so I'll tell you something.
we tried.
You try, okay? Well, when you do something for the community, there are going to be people that are going to say, "Oh, look at that person. They're just helping the community so they can get their name in headlights. They're just helping the community because they're." As one time, I heard a beautiful example. A guy is being honored at dinner. Let's call him again, Mr. Schwartz. Mr. Schwartz is being honored, and he was a wealthier guy in the neighborhood, and he's being honored. And on one of the tables at the shul, at the yeshiva's dinner, people are saying, "Oh, Mr. Schwartz, he's such a great guy. He's being honored." And then some of that table said, "Well, of course, he has such a bad home life that he likes to do stuff outside the house." Right? Talking about, when you do something, right, you're up there and you're speaking, people are saying negative stuff about you. This Sunday there's 8 speakers speaking. I just got an email, and I'm sure that people are looking at these 8 speakers and saying, "Oh well, why should you be on this list?" Or what do you have to offer? What are you getting paid for this? And so anytime you're doing something for the community, there are going to be people bringing you down, right? It's sad, but that's human nature. So get a grip. Even Moshe, people were saying Lashon Hara on, and we're not as good as Moshe. So always realize that when you do things for the community, there are going to be naysayers out there, usually small, jealous people. But nonetheless, if they gossiped on Moshe Rabbeinu, then they're going to gossip on you. But that's okay, because Moshe Rabbeinu was Moshe Rabbeinu, and you're going to do your thing. So don't worry the fact that people are saying Lashon Hara on you when you're contributing yourself to the Jewish community, because people said Lashon Hara on Moshe Rabbeinu. So hey, they said Lashon Hara on him, they're going to say Lashon Hara on me. I can't let that bring me down. So he said 3 ideas. I'm going to say one more idea. Okay, so let's just review. The first idea is if you donate something in your heart for something spiritual, that's a commitment. If you donate something in your heart for something physical, that's not a commitment. But we learned from our Safra that really everything can be something spiritual. And therefore, if you commit to your heart to something that's physical, but hopefully we can reach the level that everything physical will have a spiritual component to it, just like our Safra. Idea number 2 is the weavers. The weavers were the women, because the women, the women have the power to bring things together. How great are the women of the Jewish people? And number 3 is that we can't say more about the people saying Lashon Hara Moshe than the fact is that even Moshe Rabbeinu had people, talk trash about him. So people are talking trash about Moshe Rabbeinu. Then when we do something for the community, that's just the reality. People are going to say bad things about us, but that can't let us bring us down. Okay. The last idea I want to share with you is as follows. This week we're supposed to take out and read 2 Parshiot, Vayakel-Pidukei. This is probably the one week where lots of Jews are saying, "Wow, thank God I don't have to go to shul. There's going to be such a long reading." This reading goes on and on and on. And then after we finish 2 Parshiot, we take out another Torah and we read a special Parsha called Parshas HaChodesh. Parshas HaChodesh, anyone know what the word Chodesh means? Right? Chodesh means the new, but it's not just the new, we're making a blessing on the new month. And so the first month given to the Jewish people, isn't that funny? A month was given to the Jewish people, not really a month, but Hashem told Moshe, declare the new month. Now, if I were to tell you what's the first month of the year? You'd probably say, well, Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year. This Rosh Hashanah, we're going to have 5781. So the beginning of the year, the first month is Tishrei. The first month is not Tishrei.
Nisan.
Is Nisan. So it's a little bit weird that our calendar changes in Tishrei, but we call Nisan the first month. I don't know any other calendar like this, but we really have two first years. We have the first year for the calendar year, and we have the first year for the months. Why is that? Well, let's just take a tangent for a moment. Why is it that we have two New Years? Isn't that crazy? We have a New Year in Rosh Hashanah. We have a New Year in Pesach.
So one civil,
What?
one spiritual, one civil.
One's fizzle. What's fizzle?
Civil.
Civil.
Oh,
Civil.
civil. Like civil shepherd?
No. Civil as in society.
Okay, I would say that.
The other one is spiritual.
I would say just tweak that a little. Is that the Rosh Hashanah year is the beginning, almost like this. I would say that when God created the world in His infinite wisdom, God created the world first. He thought about it, and then He created it. How many people out there act before they think? That'd be me over here. I act a lot before I think. But the truth is that that's not the way to live a life. The life is you think, and then you act. And so God sent us a great message. God could have thought and acted at the same time, but God sent us a profound message. He says, first, I'm going to think about creating the world. We call that machshava. And then God says, I'm going to create the world. That's lemaisa. And so we have two first years. The first year is the Rosh Hashanah year, and that's more sort of when God thought about creating the world. And you'll see all the mitzvos of that year, of that month, are all spiritual. Teshuvah, dwelling in a sukkah, the concept of dwelling. They are, coming back to Hashem, hearing the shofar. They're all sort of the spiritual things, whereas the month of Nisan is physical. You have the blessing of the sun, which is once every generation. That takes place in the month of Nisan. You have burning the chametz, eating the matzah. So it's very physical things. And so you have two New Years. You have the New Year's in thought and the New Year's in action. But this New Year, where it all starts, the month of Nisan, the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people. Now there's 613 commandments given to the Jewish people. So now there was a commandment to not eat from the sciatic nerve that was given to one individual. That was given to who? Yaakov. Be fruitful, multiply. That was given to Adam and Eve. Give a bris to yourself. That was given to Abraham.
Okay.
Mitzvahs given to individuals, but the first mitzvah given to the entire Jewish people, like the nation, the mitzvah of the new month. Make yourselves a new month. This month of Nisan is coming in. We're right around the corner. Next week, we're going to celebrate the new month of Nisan. And this is the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people. Now, if I'm giving the first mitzvah to the Jewish people, I'm doing something a little more dramatic than make yourself the new month. If I'm giving the first mitzvah to the Jewish people, I would do the mitzvah of, honoring your parents. I would give the mitzvah of Shabbos. I would give the mitzvah of charity. I mean, there are lots of first mitzvahs. I mean, think about it. If you're speaking to your child and you say, okay, here's the first thing you got to do in life. You would not say, make yourselves the new month. I mean, that's from the 613. Now, you wouldn't even know that that's a mitzvah. But even if you know that's a mitzvah, if I give you the list of all 613, this would come in like 29th place, 52nd place. And yet the first mitzvah Hashem gives to the Jewish people is the mitzvah of make for yourself a new month. It's an amazing, extraordinary idea. And the rabbis talk about this a lot. In fact, we do a special reading about this mitzvah. But I'd just like to share with you what I think is going on here. And it's not my idea. I think this is the idea. And the idea is as follows, is that we have a great opportunity now, first week of Corona, which is we're reassessing everything. I mean, I don't know about you, but if you have a retirement portfolio, that I'm sure is shrunk. If you had, just everything in life, everything is changing, and we're feeling our vulnerability, which is, quite frankly, a good thing to feel vulnerable, because when you feel you're not vulnerable, then you don't take you take things for granted when you're feeling all good about yourself. When you're feeling vulnerable, you start saying, well, who do I have? I have my family. Okay, that's really important to me. I have my health. That's really important to me. But when not feeling vulnerable, we overlook the important things in life. So I'm so happy. I lost so much money. Woohoo! Way to go, Ellie. Now I can be nice and vulnerable and appreciate my family. I like my in-laws. Okay, here, I said it. Okay. I like, okay. So the first mitzvah is HaChodesh HaZelachem is such an important mitzvah. Because that mitzvah is, what's the word Chodesh? Chodesh means the new month. What does Chodesh really mean? Chodesh means new. What Hashem is telling you is that the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people is make for yourself a new month. Every month has to be new. Every day has to be new. You have to bring newness to your life. We are stuck. Every Shabbos, my whole life, I wake up, I can tell you that since I'm 9 years old, I've gone to shul every Friday night my entire life. I think, except for being really sick. Probably I can put on my hands the Friday nights I missed in shul. Shabbos morning, since I'm 8 or 9 years old, I think I've gone to shul, I don't know, every Shabbos morning in my life, except for maybe a couple of exceptions due to this or that. Shabbos mincha, coming back to shul, I think mostly every time. I remember one time Purim was on a Friday, and I went to shul that Friday night. True confessions of a rabbi. But I'll tell you what, this Shabbos, to me, going to be hopefully a lot more magical than all the Shabbos I went to shul. Going to shul and davening with a minyan is so much more important than davening by yourself at home. I say, yeah, but this is going to be pretty special that I don't have a minyan. There's a famous story that's going around, the true story of Rabbi Elie from Lezhinsk. Does anyone know where Lezhinsk is located?
Poland.
Lezhinsk is located right near Mississauga. No, Lezhinsk is located in Poland. And I was at his kever. I actually went to a mikvah near his kever in Poland, and I had a couple of shots of vodka near his kever in Poland. So he was a very famous rabbi, and he had a brother, Reb Zusha. There's a rock star named Zusha, and they went around together, and they were one time thrown into prison by the locals, and they wanted to study Torah together. And they were studying Torah.
Lost my video. I can hear him, but it's not. What is it?
Corinne, I see you and I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yeah,
hear
but
you.
I lost my. I can hear you and I can see you,
That's
but
great.
it's not synced. But it doesn't matter. It's still meaningful.
Thank you. Wow, you're special. Half your membership is here. So they were in jail and they were studying Torah together. And then one realized that there was a pot in the prison cell with all of the non-Jews in them, and that pot was obviously to go to the bathroom in. And then one said to the other, 1 second here, we can't study Torah.
Right.
Because you can't study Torah when there's a excrement in the room. So they were so happy, and then their smiles turned to frowns. They couldn't study Torah. And then one said to the other, 1 second here. We're actually doing God's will, because God's will is to not study Torah with this excrement in the room. So they got so excited they can honor God by not studying Torah that they started to dance. Oh, we can honor God. Isn't this amazing? We're not learning Torah. And they started to dance. Oh, we're not learning Torah because we're honoring God by not studying Torah with excrement in the room. They got so excited that the prison guard, who was an anti-Semite, said, I don't want these guys to be happy. So he took the pail of excrement out of the prison. So what happened then, of course, then they were able to study Torah again in happiness. When things are a little bit different, you have an opportunity to get that newness back. It's so hard, the newness, right? I go to shul, I read from the siddur every day. I tell you what, it's not easy. It's the routinization of life. And God says, I don't want routine. He knocked the whole world with one invisible small disease. He went like this to the world. Whoop! Get rid of your routines. And now we have an opportunity to serve God in a new way.
Nice.
Unfortunately, with not excrement in the room, but with a fatal and deadly poison in the world, not just in the room. And we have to be very careful. But this gives us an opportunity to serve God in a new way and bring some newness into our life. That's the power of this week. This week is about making things new. And I think maybe over the last years and decades, we've just gotten a routinization of everything that's important to us. Our study of Torah, our prayer, even the way we communicate with our family. How many times do kids say, Mommy, I love you? When my kids say, Daddy, I love you, you know what I think? I think you don't love me, you're just saying those words. There's no feeling behind those words. I want you to get down on the knee and say, Abba, I love you. But that's not gonna, I love you, good morning, I love you, how was school? Great, blah, 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 blah. Life is just one big blah, 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 blah. So comes Corona and says, I want you to focus on fresh. Now, with us trapped, unable to go out in the world, we're forced to be new. So I think that's why Shabbos, this first Shabbos Corona, God willing, maybe this Shabbos and next Shabbos will be Shabbos Corona too. But this is the first Shabbos Corona. Can you imagine what was going on last week? Last Shabbos, your life was so simple. You heard about Corona, you heard about China, Italy, things were going on here. It was just 1 week ago, I actually went to a bar mitzvah last Shabbos. Last Shabbos, I slept at Bathurst and Lawrence. You know, they got some people living over there. I slept at Bathurst and Lawrence. I went to a Friday night dinner with 40 people. I walked back here Shabbos morning. There was only 40 people in shul because people were really nervous about. I walked back for a Shabbos luncheon at Shari Shemayim. I had a big Sudah Shlishit, or as we say in French, Shalashidis, and life was, you know, it was crazy traveling and this and that. In 1 week, it's just been since Sunday. In 5 days from now, the whole world has gone topsy-turvy. This is our opportunity. Every challenge is an opportunity. Comes this week's Parsha, we're not going to read it, but we'll at least know it, that the new mitzvah, the mitzvah of newness comes into play. And Hashem says, I want this to be the first mitzvah, because this has to be the paradigm, that every mitzvah has newness to it. And if you do things by rote, it doesn't mean anything to me. Many people have done me favors. So as I mentioned last week, this friend Akiva, he got my son on this flight. I was calling Aeroplan. Try to call Aeroplan on, when did you leave? It was last week. I tried to call Aeroplan. You are now 1,722 in the queue. If you stay online for 400,000 hours, we'll tell you that we can't help you. In fact, the funniest line was, one of my kids called up a place and it says, we're sorry, we're too busy, we're not taking anyone's phone calls. And I'm thinking, wait, if you're not taking anyone's phone calls, then you're actually not busy for me, right? You thought about that? Sorry, we're too busy, can't take anyone's phone calls. It's like what Yogi Berra said. No one goes to that restaurant anymore. It's too busy. So I was a little bit curious about them saying they're too busy for me not taking any phone calls. And this guy Akiva got my son on a flight because he's an Aeroplan VIP. It's good to, you know, it's better than having a swimming pool in your backyard. Anybody? Having your neighbor that has a swimming pool in their backyard, because then you can use it and leave. You don't have to worry, right? So I know that's same with VIP points, but he got, and the appreciation I had towards him was so great. But it's now been 5 days since he did that kindness for me, and in a year from now, it's going to be a year and 5 days, and appreciation wanes. And when we tell Hashem how much we love him, and then the next day we say, I love you, Hashem. And the next day, I love you, Hashem. And the third day, Hashem, I love you. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Just like my kids say, I say, do you love Abba? So my 4-year-old says, I love you, Abba. 1 second, I don't know if I have a 4-year-old. Yeah, I think I do. Okay. My 4-year-old says, I love you, Abba. And then I tell my 6-year-old, do you love me, Abba? And she says, I love you, Abba. And I go to my 12-year-old, I said, do you love me, Abba? And they say, leave me alone, Abba. Stop asking me. You're annoying me. That's how we get to our relationship with Hashem. We love, but it's all, words are cheap. So we have to bring newness to everything we do. And that's the power of this week. Hashem is forcing us to bring a newness to everything we do. And to me, that's just not a small silver lining, that's a big silver lining. So let's just review the points, and I'll wish you a great day. The 4 points we learned today were, number 1 is that we should be on the level of Rav Safra. It was pretty special. He was not only a man of truth, but he's a man that saw every activity he did as a spiritual activity. And that's why when he heard the treadmill, whatever, being sold for $100, he felt he was not just being truthful to that person, but he made a real commitment because he saw the whole world as a spiritual journey, and he didn't compartmentalize between physical and spiritual. Number 2, we learned about the greatness of a woman. The woman actually took the hair of the goat and put it into the beged. This teaches us that the woman had the koach of chibur, of bringing people together. Very different than a man that has a distinct koach of pirud, of compartmentalizing and moving things apart from each other. And we also learned this idea that people even said Lashon Hara on Moshe Rabbeinu. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But if they said Lashon Hara on Moshe Rabbeinu, that means they're going to say Lashon Hara and every person that commits, that does something to the community. So we should realize that that's an inevitability and that shouldn't get in our way from doing things for the Jewish people. That didn't get in Moshe's way. And the last thing we learned is that this week's Parsha, we're going to read about newness, that the first mitzvah, the paradigmatic mitzvah given to the Jewish people is make yourselves a new month, which means that we have to make everything we do new and fresh. You know, just to end off, my wife always says that the difference between matzah and chametz. So I don't know if you've heard these 3 letters, chametz and matzah. The 2 letters are the same, and the 1 letter that's different between chametz and matzah is a hey and a ches. And the difference between a hey and a ches is obviously very small. If you look at the letters, it's just a small drop. And we know the small drop is the difference between when you're baking matzah, matzah can turn into chametz so easily. It's just a small little bit. But if you do things with urgency, not with urgency, but with enthusiasm, if you do things with enthusiasm, just like the mitzvah of matzah, I don't know if you've ever had challah 2 days after Shabbos, 3 days after Shabbos.
No.
If you ever left the challah outside, and even in a Ziploc, and you have it 2 weeks after, you eat that, it's already a science project. It's green, it's disgusting, it's moldy. Right? When you have, one time, Rifki was away. I'm going to say something very explicit now, so you might want to put it on, close your ears. But one time Rifki was away for 2 weeks in the Catskills, and I didn't really do shopping, and I was too lazy to get new cereal, and I poured myself a bowl of cereal that was in the cubby for a while, and I was eating it, and I said, this cereal doesn't have raisins in it. Why are there so many raisins in my
Good God.
And then I realized those raisins are moving.
Oh.
I told you should have listened to the last minute. That's all the gory stuff. Anyways, blah, 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 getting all the bugs out of my mouth. It was disgusting. I actually just said that to freak you out. That's my last point. But I'll tell you that bread, you leave bread lying around, it turns into a science project. Matzah, you can eat it a week later, a month later, you can eat matzah 4 months later, and matzah still has the crunch. And that tells us an important lesson in life, that if you live a life of matzah and you get excited about things, then it's long lasting. I tell you, I can 100%, when I get out of bed in the morning with a matzah life, with a newness, my day is different. But if I hit the snooze button more than once, my day is lackadaisical. Everything is about how you take those first moments. When you have that first moment of the mitzvah and you grab it and you boom and you go for it, then it's going to be like matzah. It's going to stay fresh, not only the day of, but it's going to stay fresh for months, and it could stay fresh for eternity. But if you live a life of challah, where you're sort of lazy and you do things in a lackadaisical way, then everything turns into a science project. I love science, but I don't like science projects. I want to wish everyone a great day. I'm going to give my sermon tomorrow at 3. It's the first time ever in the history of the Parsha Jewish Center that there'll be no live people laughing at my sermon. But I hope and pray that there will be at least people laughing on Zoom and maybe a little content in that sermon as well. I wish everyone a great day. Thank you so much for joining. Be well, everyone.
Be well, Rabbi.
Take care.
Bye.
Love you all.
Thank you.